Broadcast today at today's open meeting can be viewed on the county's website at lancaster.ne.gov. First item up is the department budget hearings with Dennis Meyer, our budget and fiscal officer.
All right. Okay. So today we're talking a few different budgets. We're going to start with
We actually get to pull up OpenGov.
some property management stuff, building fund stuff. We'll talk public defender, and then we'll talk the three budgets that Troy Hawk's got. So, So today you can actually go in and kind of take a look at some of the stuff. Where I'm going to go in again is right through the transparency portal, so that you can kind of see where we've got everything kind of set up there by the budget hearing. I mean, this does work a little bit better without your guys' heads in the road, and
You kind of like
Our
it when
heads are in the road, Dennis? Did that just come out? No.
sometimes they get in the road. I mean, they just really do.
you prefer it when you get to drive then?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll have Karen come up and we'll start talking Fund 66, which I call property management, but Fund 66 is really the fund that we utilize for all of our county-owned buildings. We've got a few different funds that Karen works with. 66 that we're talking today, county-owned buildings. So you will see right now, when you look at the budget, her revenues and expenditures are right about even. There's a $63 difference. And with this fund, what we will do is we will clean it up when we know what our fund balance is. That's how we will get everything balanced. But what this shows you is the amount of rent that she is collecting for the county-owned buildings is then being dumped back into salaries and benefits and different operating and stuff like that. So, Karen, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about Fund 66.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Fund 66, we've got some variances. It's bounced around just a little bit, but not huge variances. What I am pleased to say is that some of our repair and M costs, our larger ticket items like the HVAC stuff and the boiler things, are actually, I'm budgeting for about 22% less. Now there's other line items that are going to make up for that. And that kind of ties a little bit into the Fund 51 things for some capital improvements. And we've done some things in the last couple of years that have taken some of these day-to-day expenses, repair and maintenance types of things out by making the capital improvements. Our utilities are up about 2.13% from last year. It's more water than anything else. I don't see anything that jumps out at me, but I don't think a 2.13% increase in utilities is anything really that's out of the normal. City IS, I bumped that up a little bit. We don't use a lot of that cost doesn't get passed through Fund 66. Salaries and benefits bumped. Do you want to refer to the attachment that I had, the personnel summary form? I fill this out every year just so that you can see that the number of FTEs, 4.5, that's been remaining constant. And actually, your costs for those particular 4.5 have gone down. We've reshuffled a little bit. We had somebody retire. We've got 2 of the 4.5 that are at step 2 as opposed to step 8. So that cost actually went down. You are also paying for a percentage of what we call admin costs. It goes under a different object code, but you're paying for a percent of my time, my administrative staff time, our accounting person, a facilities manager that oversees the staff that is at the remote buildings, part of the cost for our carpenter, and wow, have we given him a workout. And we have a new staff person that really has a lot of plumbing experience, and he is great to pull And we've, I'll be able to figure out next year a little bit better on how much we've saved, but boy, he can do some pretty miraculous things. And so, again, those R&M costs that typically would go out to contractors are down a little bit. My idea was to take a look at the revenues, and it wasn't a deliberate attempt to make sure that things balanced out, although there is some discretionary things in there. For instance, there are fees for professional services, and again, this ties into the Fund 51 capital improvements. I am going to have to pay for drawings and things along those lines to put out for bid for some of these items.
Well, and I think it kind of helps. We used to, a few years back, have to transfer a little bit of general fund money over when we were still holding on to Traybert. Traybert wasn't quite having the rent to cover those types of expenditures. So now that we're really down to the buildings that we're using, now it's pretty much the last few years, the rent's covering the expenditures without a doubt. So we've gotten away from transferring any type of money.
A question about the contract with the state for that component of the youth services center. How is that, has that impacted your budget at all? I mean, that was supposed to be an even, to make sure that the revenue coming in is balancing the expenses.
Right. So
So
the youth service center's rent amount decreased. And so the rent's the same for out there, but the portion that the youth service center is paying is less because HHS is covering the piece to make it up. And then what we have done so far then with the over and above that amount that we're collecting from HHS, we're dropping into our building fund to utilize that for whatever we decide to utilize it for. So we got two different pieces. One piece of HHS in Fund 66 and the other piece in our building fund that we'll talk about here in just a minute. Any other questions before we talk about the building fund? Karen's kind of involved in that a little bit also. So the building fund isn't really out on OpenGov at this point. So I've got an attachment that I've got with the agenda. And these kind of show the numbers on what we're kind of dealing with. We're gonna have some decisions that we have to make, and I think where we're at in the building fund is going to give us the ability to make some of those decisions. Now, it's not going to be able to be able to do everything, but I think we're going to have the ability to look at our list and figure out what's our priorities. So, in here, Karen always provides requests for the 4 buildings that we've got. So Karen, if you want to kind of talk about what we're looking at for those 4 buildings.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Well, it's not pretty aesthetic stuff this year. It's more infrastructure types of things. The Youth Services Center, we have a really efficient heating and cooling system over there. It's a multi-stack. We really, really like them. They're aging out though, and there's 3 separate components, and I need to start replacing individual components. It heats and cools that entire building, and we can't afford to have that go down. So I've put in a compressor there. Also to continue LED lighting upgrade. We did phase 1 last year. I'd like to do a second phase this year, hopefully to include the parking lot. 46 and R, they have 3 rooftop units that cool the building. I actually have one out there that's not doing particularly well and needed a little encouragement last year to keep running. So I have that scheduled as a replacement. And also, there's concrete out there that's failing. I'm actually looking maybe at some other alternatives, but there's a section of concrete out there that I need to dig out and replace. And concrete is not gotten, concrete as the cost to do that is just increased exponentially over the last few years. It's just a very expensive endeavor. Driver's testing also has an HVAC unit that I'd like to replace. And the last one at the Election Commission. There are 4, we've replaced 3, we got 1 more to go. So, and every year for the last 3 years, we've had one that started to fail. So I'm gonna try to get ahead of this one, so. And that comes to about $180,000 a request from Fund 51 from me this year.
So when we also think about other pieces of the building fund, right now, we pay for rent that's not in service over there, so that's about $147,000. We've got a little bit of money still sitting there through a couple projects. The extension building still upgrading some stuff out there. County Sheriff still got a little bit of office space remodel over there. And then Jared talked about speakers in those 8 courtrooms. That number's been built into our building fund for a little bit, so that's sitting there. So right now, when you take a look at what's really allocated out, you got about $455,000. Well, let's talk about revenue that we've got coming in. We levy for $510,000. We get a little bit of prorate, a little bit of in lieu of tax. But here is now where you can see the rent numbers that we've got coming in from a few different places. Midtown, the old detention center brings in rent. And then here's the other piece from HHS that's a little over $200,000 that we've got that we're dumping in. So when you take a look at our balance right now, and there's probably not a whole lot that will be spent before the end of the fiscal year, we're at $878,000. So in all reality, that would tell me we'd have total available resources of about 1.7, and right now we've only got about 459 of it that's allocated out. That's why I say that we've got some room there. We just have to figure it out, because the one thing that, when you start thinking some things, Karen from Extensions always talked about, adding on to that building. We've got remodel of 3 courtrooms that Teresa talked about for the juvenile court. We've got the sheriff's range that they talked about a little bit. So we've got items out there, and we're probably going to have some more items that are possibly out there, because I also told Karen that I wanted to talk about what happens when we go to the body cams, and Pat had mentioned the 2 or 3 attorneys that would possibly be needed. What do we do there, because he's out of space?
Yeah.
So I want Karen to kind of talk about what some of our next moves that we had planned on, so that you can kind of hear about that, hear about some dollars. So you got that in the back of your mind also.
Thanks. Well, first, the facility study was hand-delivered to me at the end of last week, so it is done, and I will be distributing that. I've also got a PDF that I can send, but some of those takeaways from that are kind of key and coming up right now. 2 of the most critical projects to get done are already underway. You've got the engineering administrative offices that are being remodeled right now. I see you've got a contract to approve for that. And the clerk to accommodate the 3 additional people that they need from payroll. And the Public Building Commission has already done a kickoff design meeting for that. And the PBC will be doing that project. But if we move into the next year and we look at some of the more critical space needs that was identified, really the number 1 on the list was the Election Commission. They are making do with what they have in a remarkable fashion. They are moving their own furniture. They need more space. They need more space for storage. They've got their a lot of their machines are over in K Street. It would be nice to expand that storage, that some of those could be right there on site and they don't have to be over in K Street. For the Election Commission, though, to bump out 2 portions of the building to accommodate the public and to accommodate some more storage, You know, that's probably, it's estimated cost at about $795,000. I mean, it's fairly extensive. It's certainly easier and more cost-effective than purchasing a new building,
Right.
or certainly than trying to build one. But that's a fairly substantial cost. The other thing,
And there would
yeah.
be like, what, 5 and change left after that?
pardon me?
There would be like 500,000 and change left after that? Is that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
if that's.
I'm
if
taking
that's
it
what-
out of 1.3 if we did that,
Sure.
yeah.
Plus,
Yep.
we'd have building space available. If we move the election commission out of their current building, that's what you're proposing?
No, and I'm sorry, I didn't speak clearly enough. They have some of their equipment that is stored over in the K Street warehouse.
Okay.
And they need storage on site with the stuff they have on site. But if we bump it out enough, they can move some of their things out of those mobile voting booths out of K Street. And,
Remain in the building.
right, and the long and the short of it is, you know, in 10 years, K Street is probably not going to be owned by the city or the county. And I think we need to do things now to start preparing for that. We've also got a small section for the sheriff, about 41,500 over in the Hall of Justice. We don't need to expand their space, it just needs to be reconfigured, and this is also tied to body cams, if that is something that moves forward. These costs that I'm talking to you about don't include the design costs. This is just actual construction. The other thing that has come up because of the body cams is the county attorney. I've been up there. It is really, really tight. And if he brings on 3 new attorneys, I think that is in all likelihood going to trigger the first build-out over in the 605 building. I just don't see any other way to do that. I don't see any other reason to build out another space for a pod of his people and have them not located with the rest of the department. That just doesn't make much sense. So that's about 20,000 square feet that's set aside for them over there, and probable build-out cost is $1.5 to $2 million. That cost is a public building commission expense. That would come out of Fund 912.
Karen, was that study done by Sinclair Hilly?
Yes.
Could we have them come and talk through
Yes.
it on a Thursday? You know, staff, I
Absolutely.
appreciate hearing the highlights and the dollar amounts, but
Absolutely.
I'd like to actually see the study.
Oh, yeah, well, that was part of the RFP, was a presentation, but first of all, they asked for a little bit of extension just to be able to meet with people and get the information that they needed. But now that we're meeting again in person, you know, that would be a little bit easier. So I will get the studies distributed so that you can have those, although you've got, which is essentially, he sent that out for review. It's essentially the same. And then I would be more than happy to schedule some time at a staff meeting. I'd love to talk to you about it.
So Karen, here's the question for you as the head of the PBC. With a $1.5 to $2 million build out, what does that do to your budget? What are your thoughts on how do we fund that?
How do you fund that?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. We do have a balance that is sitting in that 912 account. We need to start with we have to start with about $4 million every year. Right out of the gate, I need $4 million in there, or I'm gonna run into trouble for cash flow purposes. But right now, it's sitting at just over 6. I am putting together the capital improvements, kind of fine tuning that, and I never, ever put anything in that capital improvements item that cannot be accommodated by the 3 parts of the PBC budget. I don't know that we would need to bond for this.
Okay.
You're on the hook for furniture. I just go back to that. I hate to always bring that up, but.
Right. Okay, so that, so that's what we'll need to make sure, as we keep moving, we need to also keep Karen in the loop also, so that we can, from you that sit on the PBC board, then you got, decisions to make from that side too. Okay, any other questions for Karen? Karen, the one thing that I haven't told, but if you've listened to any of these, I just remind people that we're moving into our new payroll system.
Yes, we are.
And so,
Happily.
so training and stuff will be going from here on out, pretty much on about a monthly basis.
We are on board.
Okay.
We will be fine.
You get extra points for being the first department to actually say that. To like come at
Just
that
bring
happy.
it to it. Just bring it on. We're fine.
Yeah, just lean into it, yeah.
We've been running around doing all kinds of things we haven't done in the past, so
Right,
we are
right,
fine.
right.
Just fine.
All right.
It's
Thanks,
all been a
Karen.
growth opportunity for you.
It is a growth opportunity. This whole thing is a growth opportunity, and I'm sticking with that.
Good
Thank
for
you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk. Joe, come on up. Let's talk public defender stuff. So before we get into his next year's request, I want to kind of give you a heads up that we still might need to make a couple adjustments to the current year budget before the end of the fiscal year. We've only got about 2 Tuesdays left, but they're talking with Joe and Monica this morning, and I know Shively's coming on Thursday. There's a couple that we might have to clean up. The biggest problem with that is we've already overate that $2 million contingency this year. So, so anything that we do, we'll have to remind ourselves when we talk about the fund balance at the end of the month. But the dollar amount that we're talking with from Joe's side will not be a very large number, but we've got to get it because there's some bills that will have to get paid no matter what. Okay? Let's hop in to the budget here. Joe's request is just a little less than $5.3 million, which is about a 6.5% increase. His revenue is money we receive from the city side. As you can see, that's bumping by 5%. And I don't know how many years we've been doing the 5% increase. It's probably more than I realize anymore, but it seems like the last few years we've been able to get that. With his numbers here, and Joe can address it, with his budget request, it does include 2 new felony attorneys, so that's what's driving part of that budget also. So, Joe, I'll turn it over to you, and you can kind of talk about your budget.
Okay. First of all, addressing the current budget, we just got some numbers yesterday, and Mo and I looked at those, and there's almost everything that has to be paid has already been taken out of the budget, but it leaves us with $1,600, and that's probably not gonna be enough to cover the P card, and we have to pay that by the end of the month, but we're probably talking, I don't know, I hate to guess, Mo will check, but it might be 1,500 to 3,000, something like that, that we can't, anyway, that's regarding that. Now, regarding our proposed budget, the 6.5%, I guess that's mainly driven by a request for additional attorneys. I think for the current, or if everything stayed the same, it's about a 2% increase, which is mainly driven by salary increases, and IS changed how they calculate, and our budget went up 70%, and we don't have any control over that, but obviously people use technology a lot in our office. So those, that we can't really control. And those are big factors driving the budget increase. Regarding the additional attorneys, as you know, I try to keep tracking our caseload numbers and looking at workload standards for the attorneys. And at the time that I drafted that, late March, before we submitted the budget, my projection was that we probably could add 4 felony attorneys and maybe 1 misdemeanor attorney and save the county money. And and if you look at my explanation, there's a certain number of cases where, based on the average cost per case from the district court or county court, it becomes cheaper for us to add staff. Now, since March, filings have gone down. So we haven't been overloading because filings have gone down. Now, a lot of stuff, there were some changes in practices by both law enforcement and the county attorney and the city attorney, but some things have just been delayed. So that's going to catch up with us. And if the practices revert to what they were before, those numbers will go back up. As far as the request for those 2 attorneys, I mean, I know we could add those attorneys and we could save money. We've really tried to be very careful as we've brought new attorneys in. And fortunately, since I've been in charge, we've had pretty low turnover. And we've got a pretty good training system for bringing people in and then really making sure people are trained well on a docket before the attorney, the next attorney moves. And that's worked really well. We have an attorney who's leaving very soon. The pandemic caused him and his wife to reassess their lives, and she's from Arizona, and they decided to move close to family. We have somebody lined up to replace them, but it's going to be a while. Yeah, if you wanted to save money, you could give me the attorneys, but I think that our success in keeping and retaining good people is in part how we handle things. And so instead of 2 attorneys as soon as possible, I think it might be smarter if you gave me 1 attorney at mid-year. And I think over time it would still save the county money, but I think we could handle that transition better internally. The furniture part of the budget is driven by converting a couple of offices to attorney offices. So if we only did 1, that would reduce that furniture request also. So I'm just throwing that out there. I know you've got to deal with a lot of difficult stuff, and we're in such an uncertain world with the pandemic. I know that, our computer, we replace about 1/4 of our computers every year, and that's in the budget request. And in that current request, there's only 1 laptop with a docking station, which is what I have, and it's been a really good thing. I'm afraid that this winter we may all be back at home because I don't think we've seen the worst of the pandemic yet. And it may be that some of our attorneys may decide that having a laptop is a better way to go. I know with the new computers, the computer part itself is a smaller box, and it's a lot easier to move that around than a tower, because we had people who had to move towers home. And people really jumped in March. We were able to get people working from home in a short period of time, and it was crazy. And I'm sure that happened in department after department, but it's really worked quite well. There are parts of it that we don't like. It's better for our client relationships when we can meet with people in person. And there are certain kinds of court hearings that you really have to do in person. But for me, the driving priority over at least the last 3 months has been the safety of our staff and our clients. And it continues to be. I want people to work from home if they can, and I want to do things by video when we can. There are things that just sometimes don't work that way, and all of this, we're just feeling our way. I know the courts are really pushing to try and get things going again, but there are other states where courts have said we're not doing jury trials till September, or things like that, and we'll just have to see, as far as all of that goes. But it will impact all of these things. So that's kind of my thoughts is, as far as additional staff, I think that for our office, handling it smoothly, and for the budget, maybe doing 1 mid-year would make sense. Whenever you do it, I think you'll save money. And I think we've seen with the district court budget that their amount for legal services has been pretty steady the last couple of years. And there might have even been a reduction a couple of years ago. And I think that our addition of staff has helped. But ideally, if you only had to fund conflicts of interest and not the overloads, I mean, obviously, that would be the ideal situation, and it would take us adding more staff to do that, but I want to do it in a way that's smart for our office, for quality representation and staff retention. So that's my thoughts on that, and, you know, I'm happy to entertain any questions. And as far as how we're going to continue to deal with the pandemic, I think all of us are just feeling our way through that, and but it's serious, and it's not going away. It'd be great if some of those changes in filing practices and arrests were long-term. You know, we've been fortunate, I think there've only been a couple of people at the jail and they've been able to isolate them, but, you know, other parts of the country have had some real nightmares in their correctional facilities, and some of those things seem inevitable here, but anyway, that's all I have to present right now, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Joe, you heard my payroll spiel, so.
Yeah, I did do the training, and then
So-
embarrassingly yesterday, my chief deputy sent me an email. It's like, I've requested vacation, and it's like, but there's no link. I did the training, and it's like, I'm gonna need more training on how I have to go in and approve it. So, you know, but I have told people, you know, that they need, when those training sessions are available,
Yep.
they need to participate, and, I know that June 18th date was talked about, and what happens on June 18th?
That, you know, why you're probably not able to get in there yet is because June 18th will be when the module actually is
Okay,
up and going.
Okay.
So, so once we get to there, there will be more training right about after that, and then from there, then you will be able to start doing the absence module stuff. So, so just hold back for a couple more days.
Okay, and when you talk about things being fully up in a few months, I mean, is there any reason why if people have done the training after June 18th, they can't just start doing it?
No,
this way?
we're just putting up pieces. So the absence module, so for those requests and stuff, that will be going live from here on out. We won't be completely live until we get to October 1, and that's when payroll will be full go. But we're gonna, each month we'll start implementing one more module, and so we'll just kind of build up to where payroll's our last thing that will go live October 1.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Chain thing is interesting.
All right. We'll have Troy come up. I'll just kind of remind everyone, Troy is going to be talking about 3 different budgets. His clerk of the district court budget, his jury commissioner budget, and his mental health board budget. So, Troy, you want to start with clerk of the district court?
Sure. Clerk of the District Court budget, I'm asking for approximately $60,000 more this year than we had last year. And really that's about $51,000 in personnel services with just the cost of living increases from the last year. And about another $14,000 in data processing services. If I understand that correctly, IS is changing how they bill. Each department is kind of a wash to the county, but each department gets a different bill, so that goes up. But in VoIP services, our budget went down, and I'm not sure about the math on that. I think we had been budgeting for VoIP, and that's paid out of a different IS fund or something.
We were separating VoIP always out, but now with the new budget model, we're not going to be billed specifically for VoIP by itself, so we're just going to pay for it all out of IS costs.
So really, that's my budget. I've got some increase in personnel costs, the increase in the IS costs, and everything else is holding pretty steady. I have requested for 3 additional laptops, and that's really in response to what has happened these last few months. I had a laptop, I was fine, but I had some other folks that had a laptop, they would have been able to work from home a lot easier than they were able to otherwise.
So Troy, do you think that's gonna be your move, is to move towards laptops?
I don't think so overall, because a lot of what we do, we still have to be in the office to do. There's still people filing protection orders, attorneys filing things. We still need to get on the state's justice system. You can get on that from home if you VPN in, but it is very clunky and very cumbersome. We still have to have our office open. I think it's going to be more, we'll have laptops for selected people, or maybe those folks that don't have their own computer at home, that will say take a laptop home to log in and do what you can from home.
Okay.
And we just, the previous 2 years, we did a computer refreshment, so we're running pretty new with our desktops right now. So in 4 years, that could change when it's time for new computers, but right now, we're not looking at a mass changeover.
Okay.
Something I do want to add on, and I wasn't gonna bring it up, but Karen was here and you're talking facilities. I just wanted to put the plug in that, eventually, we expect in the coming years, and that's a legislative issue, so I won't guess as to when that will happen, we would get a 9th District Court judge. When that happens, they'll probably move into the space I am, and my office will move over to the 605, and we'll open that 3rd floor skywalk. My plug is, don't give away that space before we get moved into it, so.
And me and Karen have talked, and you know, and we've always kind of thought that would be the driver for everything with the county attorney, with all that. But now I think, you know, the body cam stuff might just kind of jump that attorney move before that next judge is out there. So we're not going to give it away. We might start charging you for rent on nothing, but no. So we've got it.
So that's my district court budget. If you have any questions, it's pretty steady year to year. We don't see any big purchases coming up other than what we just talked about. We had in years past talked about a new microfilm machine. We finally pulled the trigger on that this year. We got to the point where our old one was not really working for us anymore. We had somebody come in, wanted to do a big research problem, and we rented a new microfilm machine for them so they could do the research. And the vendor said, "Well, we'll rent it and then sell it to you when you're done if you like it." And we had the money in the budget to go ahead and make that purchase. So really, I think we're good for this year, and
Okay.
we don't have any unexpected costs staring at us in the face either.
Okay.
No large retirements or anything you're budgeting for? Okay.
No, we had 2 retirements this year that we weren't expecting, but that's this year. So we've talked with Dennis about that already.
Right.
But nothing that we're looking at for next year that we're planning on.
Okay, let's jump over to jury commissioner. And jury commissioner is about a $427,000 budget.
You know, and I think there's even less to talk about in that budget than the other one. We don't expect a lot of changes. I think right now, if you look at our jury budget today, our numbers went down because we haven't had very many juries. To be honest, I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. I know in July we're going to start doing some more jury trials. As Joe mentioned a few minutes ago, some stuff has just been delayed a little bit. I honestly don't know what it's going to look like in July and August and September and October if we're going to be catching up on all those juries. Our numbers may jump back up above normal, but right now, for budgeting purposes, our jury budget is pretty much the same as it was last year, with the exception of a few personnel increases due to the just cost of living.
So Troy, you got 1.75 FTEs for jury commissioner?
Yes, I've got one full-time and one part-time worker in there. And we brought those over from Dave when the jury commission moved from the election commission over to my office several years ago.
Okay, let's talk your mental health board. That one there is, looks like the budget's about 158, 155.
And I believe that's about 3,000 more than it was last year. Again, just cost of living increases. I think if you go back a couple of years, that number has gone up and down. A lot of that is, I mean, you all know what's going on with mental health in the community. I also know that the county attorney was trying to clean up some stuff over past years, and we've had extra hearings or hearings run late, just as we're trying to follow up and you know, get cases cleaned up, if you will. Cases where maybe somebody's been released and we hadn't actually gone in and cleaned everything up on the backside of that, review hearings and things like that. So, but overall, I think things have kind of settled down a little bit into a steady state, and we're moving forward with that. I really have one full-time employee in my office, but I pay for half of her salary out of the mental health board budget and half of her salary out of the clerk of the district court budget. And then I also have the mental health board members. We have 3 board members and then 2 or 3 alternates for each one of those. And we pay them, they're not, I don't believe they're listed as FTEs. We just pay them on an hourly rate based on when they're in for the mental health board hearings.
So Troy, has COVID slowed down the hearings?
No.
No, okay.
We basically moved to Zoom,
Okay.
worked with the county attorney public defender's office. We have the mental health board, and my staff is still over at the crisis center where they were. Public defender is at a separate location with their client. County attorney is at a separate location, and we do it by Zoom, and it's been pretty much business as usual.
Okay.
And those are my 3 budgets. No big surprises this year. Questions?
Troy, anything on payroll? I just need to make sure we're getting your employees trained so that as we keep moving forward.
I don't know what the answer is. I guess I wasn't a huge fan of the training to say, here's a bunch of short videos to watch. I think it's just kind of hard sometimes for, you know, you're in at work, you're doing your work, and then all of a sudden they say, go watch this video when you have some time. I don't know what the answer is.
Okay.
Maybe, you know, I've always liked hey, here's the test environment. Go in and play around with it for a couple of weeks before you actually, you know, go live with it. But I think all in all, we're getting there.
Okay.
So,
Okay, well, if you got suggestions or whatever, reach out.
okay. I sure will.
Because it's new for all of us.
Mhm. You know, I think the bigger one is gonna be when we start the payroll and
Yep.
the time piece. That's where we're gonna have a lot more issues.
I mean, so it's 2 years from now, everything should be great.
We say that with a lot of things, don't we?
Didn't you say 2020 was going to be the year of change?
No, that was 2019.
It seems like I keep carrying it over to the next year.
We can't say publicly what 2020 is the year of. It's not polite.
But 2020 is a year of something.
All right, thanks, Troy.
Thank you.
Okay, so last thing before we get out of here, we've got our last department budget hearings on Thursday, but then I'm going to invite some of the city departments, and I know some of our county departments are talking to the city side right now too. So my question to you is this. I've got a list of 8 of them, but I've got a question for a couple of them on whether we need to hear from them again. David Young from IS. I feel that we've heard everything that we've needed to. So I don't know him coming in again tells us anything new. We know they changed to a new budget model, and we hear how it's affecting us. Building and safety. You know, for the most part, money-wise with building and safety, the last, I don't know how many years, fees and stuff have always covered our costs, so we've never had to cut payment to them. But my question to you is, do you want to hear from them?
hear from very often, so it might be valuable to at least
Okay.
understand
Okay.
the fee
Yeah.
system.
And the other thing too is I think that there could be some changes in some of the rules and regs, you know.
Okay.
And that might be kind of good to see how that is really impacting, growth.
Okay. So the other ones I've got is planning, purchasing, HR, health, aging, library, and then building and safety. Next question would be, do you want to try to do some of them next Tuesday after the regular board meeting? I can see how many of those I could get.
Yeah, we're here.
And then the other ones, if that doesn't work, then I'd try to get them on the Thursday. Okay? That will be the plan.
Very good.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Krista,
Yes.
Roma,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and Sean.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Very good. Thanks for being here.